In the empty desert west of Albuquerque, a young woman stood beside her truck as officers quietly closed in. 18-year-old Mariana Gomez-Salinas had spent days acting as though she were only a witness in a missing person case. But investigators now believed she had played a central role in a carefully arranged trap. When officers asked her to put down her belongings and turn around, she did not yet know how much evidence they had collected. Within moments, she was in handcuffs, asking whether someone could call her mother. The charges waiting for her included kidnapping, robbery, conspiracy, evidence tampering, and first-degree murder. The case began on May 18, 2024, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. 16-year-old Jesus Quintana Cota believed he was going out with Mariana, a girl he had been messaging through social media. From his perspective, it appeared to be an ordinary date. He picked her up, and they drove away together. But somewhere along the route, Dominic Marquez and Daniel Medrano Garcia joined them. What Jesus did not know was that investigators would later uncover messages suggesting that the meeting had been planned in advance. The group headed toward Pajarito Mesa, a remote desert area on Albuquerque's west side. It was isolated, difficult to monitor, and known as a place where people sometimes fired weapons far from neighborhoods. The next day, a couple driving through the area noticed what appeared to be a person lying in the dirt. They stopped, looked more closely, and called 911. Deputies arrived and confirmed that the victim was dead. Near the body, they found identification bearing the name Jesus Quintana Cota. The scene initially offered several possibilities. Officers wondered whether there had been a fight, reckless gunfire, or an argument that suddenly turned deadly. But the location itself suggested that Jesus had not simply wandered there. Someone had brought him deep into the desert. The following morning, Jesus' family reported him missing. Their description matched the teenager found at Pajarito Mesa, turning a disturbing discovery into a homicide investigation. Detectives now had to reconstruct his final hours, whom he had contacted, where he had traveled, and why he had ended up so far from home. 8 days after the killing, Mariana approached Jesus' family with a story. She said she had picked him up early on May 18th, but the two argued. According to her, she then left him near the Tierra West mobile home community and never saw him again. The family passed this information to police, and detectives interviewed Mariana. At first, she was treated as a possible witness. Then investigators searched the area near the place where Mariana claimed she had dropped Jesus off. In a dirt culvert near a gas station, they found his phone. It had been damaged by a bullet. That discovery created an immediate problem for Mariana's account. If Jesus had walked away safely after an argument, why had his phone been shot and discarded nearby? The evidence suggested an attempt to destroy information and mislead anyone trying to follow his movements. Mariana's status quickly changed from witness to suspect. On May 27, officers obtained a warrant and found her in another desert community near Mesa. During the arrest, she remained focused on her truck, her belongings, her mother, and what would happen next. The calm conversation could not change the seriousness of the accusations. Mariana had already offered detectives a second version of events. This time, she admitted she knew who was involved, but claimed Dominic and Daniel had forced her to drive Jesus into the desert. She portrayed herself as another victim and blamed the boys for everything. Yet a search of her phone gave investigators reasons to doubt that explanation. Messages between Mariana and Dominic appeared to show them arranging the fake date. In one exchange, Dominic instructed her to continue flirting so Jesus would remain interested. Investigators believed Mariana was being used as a lure. They also learned that Mariana and Dominic had previously dated, adding another complicated connection to the group. Detectives suspected her participation was voluntary, not the result of the sudden coercion she described. During a later interview, a detective explained why the state considered her an active participant even if she had not fired the weapon. The allegation was that the meeting had been planned, Jesus had been taken against his will, and the group had discussed stealing and dividing money. Mariana denied agreeing to every part of the plan, but investigators believed the messages and the conduct afterward connected her to the conspiracy. Dominic, who was 17, was questioned with his mother present. She quickly requested an attorney, ending the interview before detectives could obtain a statement. Silence, however, could not erase the digital trail. The messages allegedly directing Mariana to keep Jesus interested became some of the clearest evidence that the date was not genuine. Police also arrested Dominic and Daniel at the auto repair shop where they worked. Their connection with Jesus reportedly began with a dispute involving truck parts and a stolen vehicle. Daniel said he had sold Jesus items for his truck. When that truck was later stolen, Jesus allegedly suspected Daniel. The conflict escalated, and Daniel claimed Jesus later fired at a vehicle occupied by him and Dominic. Investigators found a shell casing and bullets in Daniel's vehicle, supporting at least part of the background he described. But it did not justify what followed. Unlike Dominic, Daniel agreed to speak. He first minimized his relationship with Mariana and acted as though he knew little about the plan. Detectives confronted him with the evidence and reminded him that all three suspects were facing the possibility of life in prison. Gradually, his denials weakened. Daniel acknowledged that Mariana was messaging Jesus to arrange the meeting. He claimed he had been sitting in the back, looking at his phone, while Mariana and Dominic handled the conversation. When asked why they wanted to meet Jesus, he resisted giving a direct answer. Eventually, however, he admitted that the purpose was to kill him. Daniel continued to insist that he personally did not want it to happen, but the detective pointed out the obvious contradiction. He remained with the group, traveled to the desert, and did not warn Jesus or seek help. The identity of the shooter became the most confusing part of the interviews. Mariana claimed an older man wearing a sombrero had joined them and was responsible. She described him as Daniel's uncle. Daniel offered a different explanation, saying the man was his biological father and that an R-style firearm came from him. Yet Daniel struggled to explain why this man would appear, how he knew about the plan, or why Daniel had contacted him if Daniel truly opposed the violence. Daniel's story shifted as detectives pressed for details. He described the group arriving at Pajarito Mesa, an argument or struggle, and the weapon changing hands. But his account remained fragmented and conflicted with Mariana's version. The mysterious older man was never conclusively identified. Whether he existed exactly as described, and what role he may have played, remained unresolved in the public account. What was clear was the structure of the trap. Jesus had been drawn into contact through romantic attention. He entered Mariana's vehicle expecting a date. Instead, he was joined by people connected to an earlier dispute, driven to an isolated location, and killed. His phone was damaged and abandoned, while Mariana later attempted to create a false last-known location. Back in the interview room, Mariana repeatedly asked about calling her mother and boyfriend and about how long she would remain in jail. The detective explained that a judge would decide whether she could be released while the case moved through court. He also told her that the decisions made by the group had cost a 16-year-old his life and placed every suspect in danger of spending decades behind bars. The legal process eventually separated each person's responsibility. Dominic Marquez pleaded guilty to charges that included first-degree murder, conspiracy, armed robbery, and aggravated assault, and received a 22-year prison sentence. Daniel Medrano Garcia entered a no-contest plea and also received 22 years. Mariana Gomez-Salinas went to trial. The jury did not convict her of murder, but it found her guilty of kidnapping, tampering with evidence, and conspiracy to tamper with evidence. She received a 19-year sentence. The result recognized that although prosecutors did not prove she personally committed murder beyond a reasonable doubt, her role in arranging the meeting, transporting Jesus, and helping conceal what happened carried devastating consequences. The case is a stark example of how quickly online communication, jealousy, revenge, and group pressure can combine into irreversible violence. A conversation presented as romantic became a lure. A personal conflict became a coordinated ambush. And a series of young people who may have believed they could control the situation instead destroyed one life and permanently changed several others. At the center of the story is Jesus Quintana Cota, a 16-year-old who believed he was meeting someone he trusted. The evidence left behind by his phone,